Hi everyone, welcome to episode 75 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Miller. Thanks for listening. In this episode, Daniel Lynch catches up with Jonny and Melyssa Shannon from Wynona Bleach. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Russell Marsden, one half of Band of Skulls duo Marsden and Richardson. So check it out, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe and share it with your friends. If you want up-to-date music news, album reviews and interviews, then check out our main website at xsnoize.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Search for the tag at XS Noize Music. Here's XS Noize writer Daniel Lynch with a taste of what's been on the website this week.
Placebo are back after a 9-year break with their 8th studio album Never Let Me Go. Drummer Steve Forrest left the band in 2015, so frontman Brian Molko and bassist Stefan Ostell take charge. Sandra Blemster gives the album 9 out of 10, saying it summarises the all-consuming chaos of recent times, but the band's rousing comeback shows there's still hope. Also in the reviews section, Imelda Heher has been listening to Warm Chris from Aldous Harding. This one gets 9 out of 10 from Imelda, with the album's title track being one of the standouts. Kings of Leon have announced Irish band Inhaler as one of the supports on their UK dates for June and July. They'll play shows in Leeds and London, with the Snuts supporting on the other dates. Finally, XS Noize has teamed up with pop rock radio station Airwave. You can listen now online and on digital radio, and you can find out more about the partnership at xsnoize.com.
Wynona Bleach's debut album Moonsoake was released this year. The Belfast-based band recorded it in 2019 in an abandoned warehouse in Portugal, with plans to release in early 2020. But all that changed with the pandemic. Daniel Lynch caught up with Jonny and Melyssa Shannon and asked if they could have predicted what happened in the 3 years between recording and releasing the album.
I feel like I did a little bit, because we did the album and then we did some gigs in England in the February of 2020. So we'd done the album in end of 2019, and we did some of the we did some gigs in February-ish, and then I remember we were all lying on the floor of our manager's house in London and watching the news about it happening. And I remember distinctly saying out loud, the only way they can fix this is to lock everything down. And everybody in the band went, "You're fucking talking shit, Jonny. There's no way. There's no way they're going to do that." And I remember even Aaron distinctly saying, what are all the landlords and banks going to do when they don't get their mortgage and rent and all? And I was like, it's the only way they can fix it. And then it happened. So I sort of predicted it in February.
Jonny, the epidemiologist.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't, but I remember just saying it, you know.
What was the experience in Portugal like? Because not many bands would, you guys have kind of taken a bit of an unconventional route, it's fair to say, like the tour of Russia, changing the names, and then going off to Portugal to record the album. You didn't make it easy for yourselves, but how did it all work out?
Yeah.
Well, we really didn't like the old name. It just felt like it meant nothing to anything, and people would ask us excitedly, what does it mean? And we were like, nothing.
Didn't have a meaning.
So it was we wanted something that we could be proud of and not be afraid to be like, this is who we are and this is what it means.
Yeah, and I think we always had this sort of somebody asked us in an interview recently, what's a motto that you go by? And I didn't really know what to say. And the only thing I could say was, if you're going to do it, really fucking do it. That was all I could say, because that seems to be how we've always been. It's we've never done anything by a half measure. It's always been if we're going to go and do an album, well, I'm not just going to go to, some studio in Belfast, of course. It was always we're going to have to make a story around it and do something. So the Portuguese thing really just came about by accident. It wasn't a pre-planned thing. It was our front of house mix guy, the guy who does all our gigs with us, Michael. He got wind of the idea from me as a joke, that we would go to this warehouse that, our friend our friend's friend owned. And Michael was like, when am I driving? You know, when am I driving all the stuff down? So I couldn't really get away from the idea. So after a while, me, Mel, and Michael actually went over in like March of 2019 or 18 or something.
2018.
Something like that. And we went over to scope it out, and it was actually really cold and rainy and shit. And we were like, well, we could still do it here, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be a holiday. You know, it's going to be a shitty time of the year. And then he just really didn't stop about it. So it turned out a ferry opened up between Cork and Spain, and just that year. So we booked him on that ferry, and he drove the van from Belfast to Cork, and then from Cork to Spain, and then Spain down to Portugal.
I suppose once you've got the sound engineer on board, that's half the battle.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it was almost the other way around. He had to try and get us on board.
Michael's our sixth member.
Yeah, he really is. He was very much like, I want to do this, and he didn't stop talking about it to the point where we had to do it. You know, that's really
just to shut him up. That's the only reason.
And so whenever you went over to Portugal, to what extent were the songs as we hear them on the album? Did a lot of things change in between, or did you have a fair idea going over there what you were aiming for?
We definitely, there's some songs that are completely not what they were when we left Belfast at all, just because, you know, I remember being on the roof of the house we were staying in, had this little roof terrace thing, which was like really cool. And I remember Aaron and I and Ethan had gone early to like clean the place up. Ethan's like our backline tech at the time, still is, but with COVID we haven't done any gigs really. So so Ethan, me, and Aaron were there, I think about 2 or 3 days earlier, just to sweep up the factory floor and try to make it somewhat habitable. And I remember being on the roof with Aaron and like completely rewriting a song with him, just totally. And it was drag. There's actually, what we're doing for a lot of people who have pre-ordered is they're getting a CD with demos on the CD. So people who got the pre-order will hear how dramatically different drag was before we rewrote it with an acoustic guitar on the roof of, you know, the villa. So like there's loads of songs that completely change, and then Bill had his input and changed, you know, even more than that. You know, there'll be a bridge that's entirely different, or there'll be, you know, a pace that's entirely different, or so.
It changed my pronunciation of words as well.
Did, yeah.
For the better.
In what way? Like, give us an example.
Later and later.
Yeah.
Like,
he made her do an English accent.
But it sounds so much better. So fair play to him.
Yeah, when you listen to it, like, it is like when you hear the demo, because I hadn't heard the demos, and we made that CD for the demos, of course, like a year ago, because of course we thought we were shipping this out a year ago, and we packed all the orders up and realized we had a few spares. So like, this is like Tuesday there, you know, or whatever. We were like, right, we've got these extras. So I brought one, I put one in the car and put it in the CD player, and I was like, I never listen to CDs, this is going to be novel. And I put on our demos, and I was like, Jesus Christ, that could have been what the album was. Like, fuck.
Well, it included a lot of phone demos as
well,
yeah, so it wasn't like,
it wasn't that bad, but it definitely had, like, you know, I can hear Bill's influence there. You know, it's like completely changing, you know, phrases and how she pronounced things. It was a very cool thing to do. Like,
how did that come about? Because like, you obviously did the stuff with Alice in Change, and then there's the comparisons with kind of heavier bands. But then the choral, you maybe wouldn't see that correlation, pun not intended. How did that come about? And was that kind of something, did you want to bring a bit more of that pop into it? Was that intentional?
Well, actually, it wasn't even really a pop thing. It was a songwriter thing. I think we'd all sort of looked around the room and went, okay, well, every one of us nearly has a degree in, you know, sound engineering. So every one of us knows how to make a drum kit and knows how to patch a console. So it wasn't really like we needed somebody. We didn't want to go and get a producer who was techie. We wanted somebody who was a songwriter. And
just approach it from a different way.
Yeah, that's it. So Aaron and I had talked about it for a while. Everybody had talked about it, but Aaron was the one who had suggested Bill, because he just really like respected him as a songwriter and really liked everything he'd done. And it was actually Bill's solo career that Aaron was more a fan of anyway. So none of us, I mean, we all know the choral, but none of us were actually going in with Bill with a choral mindset. It was going in with Bill as a Bill mindset. It was like he was a songwriter who we all really respected. And I think we all thought that maybe, well, I certainly thought as the lyricist anyway, that I needed help sculpting it more, you know, and I thought he was like the right guy to like, you know, cut the fat from it, you know. So that was really it. It wasn't a pop thing, and certainly in the sessions he was all about the heavy ones, really, you know. Like he was banging his head and going mad for the ones that were a bit more, you know, all over the place and a bit more guitar-y. So you know what I'm talking about with the likes of Drippy. That was Bill's favorite thing that had ever happened. He'd come over and done pre-production with us and said, you know, hey, that's my favorite song on the album, you know. So but when we did the demos, it was all really heavier than the one that actually made it to the record. It was, so it wasn't from a pop perspective. It was from a songwriter thing. That was why we wanted him, you know.
Cool. Mel, Jonny kind of mentioned it there about the idea of having a story around the album. Was that an important part of it? It wasn't just about recording an album. It was about the experience and everything that's tied up in. Was that a big part of the thinking?
Yeah, well, you had a conversation with Lyndon Stevens about albums, and he was like, you got to have a story. Like, anyone can do an album. You got to have something to like give us that's interesting. Like, why would we want to listen to your album out of all the albums? So that kind of spurred on the whole. It confirmed as well that it was a good idea, because we were like, are we mental? Like packing all this stuff into a van, and it's all here anyway. We could just do it here, but why would we? Why not make it complicated for ourselves?
There's some really nice touches on, like the bits at the end of a couple of songs where you pull in the acoustic kind of demos, and there's a bit of water splashing around. I really like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was really worried about that.
Was that something that you wanted to bring in from the start, or was that just kind of incidental? You thought, oh, this sounds good, we'll throw it in?
A bit of both, I think. I remember being really freaked out about the idea, because I think it was Aaron who had the idea, or somebody. It wasn't me that suggested sitting around the pool. I don't know if you can remember who.
I can't remember.
But I was a bit like, oh fuck, is that hammy? Like, is that a bit cringe? Like, there was maybe more. Like, I think there was maybe a few more occasions where, you know, that was a suggestion where we would break that third wall, and I was a bit like, I didn't want it to be like a classic rock album, or prog rock album that had loads of silly things in it. So I was very like hesitant about that one. But that one, the only way it was sold to me, or at least I don't know who said it, but it was, we'll put it on the end of side one so that it's the very last thing on the first side. And I was like, okay, I get it. It gets quiet, and then, you know, so yeah, there's a point in. It was an idea from the start when we went over there to sit around the pool.
I think it was called the Splishy Splash idea.
Yeah, and the Splishy Splash idea didn't actually get to happen until I think nearly right at the very end of we were going home the next day kind of thing. Yeah, it was like shit, we better set some mics up. Yeah. So we brought like this tiny little interface and we set some mics up around the pool. And then I think there's video of it happening too. So we have like video of that moment. It was good.
I think Aaron's girlfriend was filming it.
Yeah, for us. Yeah. I still don't really know if I'll do it on the next album.
If you ever did, it could be cheesy. Like.
It is. It's but I do really like how it came out. I'm very proud of that track. It's good. Like that was one of the ones that was mixed by me and John Muirhead. So, and I remember it was the first mix that we made a breakthrough on, and we sent it to everybody, and everybody was like, "Yeah, okay, this is." Good.
Yeah.
Did you have that feeling during the recording process? Like, you know, the way some people are recording something, they're a wee bit on the fence, and then sometimes you've got it.
Yeah.
What was
definitely with some songs, not so much with other songs, I think.
I know. I always think when everyone's like, okay, that was great, I'm like, was it though? Like, personally, I always think I could have done that better. But sometimes.
Do you think that's a vocalist thing, Mel? Like, do you think that's, yeah.
It's possibly like, I don't know, it's about capturing a moment as well sometimes. And like, there's sometimes I listen to old demos and I'm like, whoa, I sound like really good there, but I didn't know what I was doing. But then that helps to like pull things for future live. I can understand why you would feel those kind of things. Like, I think, I listen back and go, oh God, I could do that way better now, but that's just time.
It's just how it was, and you have to commit, life. You know, yeah.
Yeah.
But when we were making the instrumental parts, at least, or the ones that at least, like, I remember there were breakthroughs. Like Drag was like Jesus, we've got this. And I didn't think Drag was a single or anything. I just thought,
Yeah.
hey, this is a really good big song, you know. And then we did everything but the choruses vocally in Portugal. What had happened was we had Bill
rewriting.
Yeah, Bill was only there for, I don't know if it was 2 weeks out of the 4, something like that. So everything that was important had to be done when he was there. And Drag was done, and it was like, I think it was seen as a home run. It was like, we just tracked that great, played it great in the room. It was all cool. And most of how we tracked that album was live in the factory. So a lot of it wasn't overdubbed. It was just that's the core members, you know, tracking that, and then Mel dubbing afterwards. And it was Mel had gone up with Bill on her own and done the verses of Drag, and whatever. I don't know how it happened that day, but I do know that we ended up coming home from Portugal without the choruses of Drag. So they weren't actually tracked. It was only just the verses that were done, but they were like so good. We were so proud of Mel. It was so brilliant. And Aaron and Carl had gone up and done some overdubs on guitar that were just excellent. And, you know, it was great.
Everything was coming together.
It was so well put together. And then literally like, I don't know, like a month had gone by once we got home and went, oh shit, we got to do the vocals for Drag. What the fuck? The choruses for Drag.
Yeah.
So
did you just open up the project and the files weren't there and you're kind of like, what have we done?
There was quite a few things where we'd done versions of things and then obviously deleted them after.
Yeah, or didn't like them.
And been like, oh, we'll come back to that
Yeah.
later, and then never did. And it was like, it's also because you're in a kind of like a holiday vibe.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, you weren't, but
I wasn't, but
I was kind of like, I'm on my holidays.
Yeah.
I'm having the time of my life.
But so our friend, the reason sort of why we ended up being able to do Portugal was our friend, and I believe in our case mentor, Dave Sinton. He had a house there, so we stayed in Dave's house. And there's a point where Bill had gone home, and I think Audrey was taking photos of the whole sessions. She had gone home the same day as Bill.
Yeah.
And so that was our first night with an early to bed evening, because everything was always like 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever
I think
time
it was
in the morning.
the first time we were like, that's too much beer.
Yeah,
now.
we've all
had
drank too much.
beer.
We've all done
Let's have a
everything.
wee early night.
We went to our bed early, and of course then the doorbell goes, and Dave and his pal Jim have surprised us with a visit. And he arrives at the door, and of course he's like, what are you doing? You're going to bed at midnight?
it's only 1 in the morning.
Call yourselves musicians.
Yeah, I know. We were like,
I know,
well, I swear to
Jim
God,
was
Dave,
like-
we've been partying too hard and we had to go to sleep. But there's a video again at some point a day after where I had basically said to Dave, oh, it's all going very well. And then when he came over, I was like, Dave's going terribly. We've only done a couple of songs, and oh God, no, it's we've done whatever, and I'm having a bad time now. I'm sorry, And then we went up to the studio the next day, which I think was a Saturday night. And I was like, right, we'll just play some of the songs and you can tell me what you think and all. And there's video of Drag playing and him going, fuck, and he really likes it. But then the chorus kicks in and then we have to sing it to him over the fucking mix.
There's nothing there.
But it was good because, he's sitting there and we've got it obviously cranked really loud. So Mel's in one ear and I'm in the other ear and we're screaming the chorus of Drag and he loves it. And that was the first turnaround moment in the album where I was like, this isn't shit. Because I thought up until now, this is shit. We have fucked up.
Yeah,
We've
it's
come
like
all the
that
way
thing
here and it's
that
terrible.
singers do, and you think that like everyone's just telling you it's good to get you out of the way.
Yeah.
Like, to get to move on. It's like, yeah, that was great. Let's do the next one.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I thought
I thought
all the guitars,
over with or something.
everything was done and everybody should just be home in their own beds. Fuck this.
I think that was when Dave as well called you whinging fuckface.
Yeah.
Which was a quote.
Which is on video too
Yeah.
at some point.
He's like, I don't care what whinging fuckface over here says.
But it was good because he's such a good sounding board because he was new to it. He'd turned up and he'd heard none of these before and he was
Fresh
sitting
ears.
in the same room we recorded it in and was like, yeah, it's fantastic. So I felt very confident after that day. The rest of the I think it was still like 2 more weeks we had and we were like, let's do it. So the rest of that month we were I was really into it and powered through it. And then but we still didn't do Drag's vocals until 2 months later in Belfast.
Yeah,
they were actually recorded
in OES Centre.
Yeah.
With John.
Bill came over though to do that. So it was weird because we were all a bit, you were certainly saying like, oh shit, how am I going to make this sound the same?
No, yeah. Trying to match a mood.
Yeah.
Like a hot, sweaty mood, and then I'm in a freezing cold room.
And yet somehow it
doesn't
sounds like it's
sound
all
too bad, yeah.
the same session.
One of the things that like really stood out on it was Hollow. And whenever I first heard like the first bit of that, it was one of those ones where I turned around, I thought the record was skipping, or I thought like, has something gone wrong here? What is this? Like,
yeah,
but every time I listen to it, as I become like used to it, it's like, Jesus, that's genius. How did that happen? Because that just to me, like the timing, the way Maddie's doing the drums, like the whole thing. And then obviously there's a turning point where it goes a wee bit more conventional into the chorus. But just that, like, that start of it is like discordant and weird timing and chaos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that one's totally live in the thing, except again, I think vocal overdubs, but just generally that is what you got. And that is what the factory really sounded like, that song. And all I can say about that is as a songwriter, I really love when albums do exactly what you just said, when they completely, because I don't really like listening to 12 songs that all kind of have the same vibe. I don't have the attention span for it. So unless it's a very specific vibe that I really like, but even then I'll generally just kind of tune out after 10 if I'm lucky. So one of my favorite albums of all time, which Maddie's favorite as well, is Melancholy and Infinite Sadness by the Smashing Pumpkins. And I loved this story that somebody told me once, which was when the Pumpkins came to play the Ulster Hall. One of my friends went to see them and knew the whole catalogue and was really a big fan. Went to the Ulster Hall and noticed that they, at the very front, whenever the lights had gone down, all these wee young teenage girls had gone to the front because they expected 1979 and Tonight. They got Tonight. And then the mosh pit opened straight after Tonight, right? And he was like, "Oh my God, these kids are gonna die," you know. And of course, then the real Smashing Pumpkins came through, and I always thought that was, for me, Hollow was the real Wynona Bleach had just eked out of that track, because we totally just like playing big fucking riffy tunes, and that was just what we liked to do. So I had to we couldn't not have that on the album. The album was kind of a best of the year before song wise, and Hollow, we were all looking at each other going, we need to put a heavy one in, like we can't not,
we always have to have a big heavy one.
Yeah. So
is there a balance to be struck there about how kind of off time and how kind of discordant you can go before it's too much?
I mean, you have to have a big hook in the chorus. That was the only way out of it. It was like, if we wanted to have a big riff in it, the only other thing it has in common with the other songs is it has that big chorus. So we had to put a big chorus in it. That was the only way to make it work. I personally, I sort of forget about Hollow, you know, when I think about the album, because it's only one. It's not like 4 heavy songs on this thing. Certainly if we had done a double album, it probably would have been 10 heavy songs on one side and not so heavy on the other. But when we signed the record deal, the A&R and the owner of the label, the manager, he basically pointed that out as his, like, one of his favorite songs. He loved it, you know, because this is a guy who had signed Placebo and signed, you know, heavier things in the past. And I think he was a bit like, fuck, it's a bit of a tune, you know. And it was only through our manager I was told that, but I was like, good on him. If he likes that, then we'll sign. You know?
It's a good sign whenever your A&R's taking the least conventional sort of sound on the album and going, that's what we're aiming for. But then one of the things that kind of surprised me was like Blue Jean finishes, and it's almost like bittersweet. It wasn't the one that I thought you would finish on, but at the same time, as soon as it finishes, I'm like, right, flip it back over.
The only thing I can say about Blue Jean is it comes from an entirely academic point, right? So when I was a kid, I noticed that all my favorite albums ended with something a bit like that, and I wondered why. And then of course I learned that later that, you know, back in those days when they pressed the vinyl, the inner was always really distorted, so they tried to go for something quieter to not be loud in the middle. And I realized that we had really wanted the swimming pool splish splosh thing at the end of side 1, so the end of side 2. To me, I was thinking about the vinyl the entire time making the record. It wasn't even, I for some reason still do that, even though it's the least listened to part, it's the least listened to media. I still think about that. And whenever we were tracking it, I had said there needs to be a quiet song on the inner of side 2, or else we're going to just have Distortion City in the middle. So that was it, Blue Jean. But Blue Jean was actually the only song that Bill had deconstructed and reconstructed. So the wee little demo CD again the other day made me realize that when we went to Portugal, we only had chord progressions for the verse and the chorus. We had no vocals, we had no melodies. I don't think we had anything apart from just chords. And he really loved that one and completely constructed it up. He really produced that one. That and a few other songs are ones that I think of Bill, because he just completely, reimagined them.
Yeah.
And there were things on it we wanted to do that we never did. And I still think about like how I wanted a vocoder and all on it. But now when I hear it, I'm like, do you know what? It works as the enter, and it's really bittersweet, like you said. The lyrics in it were written in Portugal on the roof. It was.
And do you guys write the lyrics together, or is it one or other, or is it a bit of both?
I write.
Or does it?
Yes.
He writes them. Yeah.
She edits them. So if I've
Improves
written
them,
something,
perfects them.
yes. If Mel goes to sing,
I'll be like, I'm not singing that.
that's exactly what happens. She does. She goes, no.
I am not a writer at all.
Okay, what's that like though? If you're kind of channeling what Johnny's trying to get across in lyrics, is that because I know a lot of like songwriters that I would know it is very personal, and getting that across is part of it. How do you find that singing someone else's lyrics? Although you have had input.
It just works. Like I guess we have a connection that's beyond the words, and like you will tell me like, be more like this. Like you do let me have my own spin on it, or let me. That sounds really weird, but you know what I mean. It's always worked because we've been in a band together since like 2006.
We're kids, like so teenagers.
It's always kind of been this way, and it took a long time for me to accept that I'm like. Whilst I'm a musician, I'm not really I'm not a songwriter, and I was sort of like, what is my place here? Am I just what's the point of me?
Yeah.
But clearly there is a point of me. Like I'm conveying your words, and
I can't sing,
you're
so
also you can't sing, but you're writing them with me in mind,
yes,
with my voice in mind.
Fundamentally, what it is, I totally imagine what it'll be like when Mel sings. So unlike a lot of songwriters who do service the lyrics to themselves, and they have their emotional attachment. I do have an emotional attachment big time, but I write them with the imagination that somebody else is singing them. So even just the pronouns I change because I know that. Do you know what I mean? I'll purposefully make it that it sounds like, because I know she's singing it, it's not me. So or if I'm backing her, it's still from her perspective. I've always done that. I think it because I do believe I can sing, as much as you can argue that. I never thought I could sell the songs as well as somebody else could.
When you listen to you singing just on your own, you don't like it.
No, but when I'm backing Mel, it's cracker. Like I really like harmonying and doubling with Mel, but I don't.
It's not that you can't sing. It's just
I'm not
to your taste.
I'm not the singer. I can sing, but
you're
I'm
not the
singer.
front singer. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I think what we have works. Like we
it does. There's definitely like
we're both front people.
Yeah,
front persons.
There's demos that I've done and I've heard again, and I've been like, okay, I know as a songwriter exactly what I wanted to do. And there's some sessions we'll do vocals and Mel will totally just
get it,
grab that vibe and knows what I was doing. Some sessions she won't get it, but I have to be a bit like, okay, you have to make it more like such and such because that's what I was doing. And you're like, Jesus, really? That's who you were trying to channel, Or so we'll talk a lot about inspiration, and it'll be like, I want to channel this vocalist and I want to do this kind of style, and then Mel will totally grab that. And that's your biggest like skill in the studio, because it's great, because it's like, oh shit, she's now doing an impression of me better than I could have ever done, So
of course there's times where I'm like, I have been in the past like, what is the point of me? Like I do not contribute anything, and my quote is, I'm just happy to be here. But it's not true. I must contribute something.
It is a bit of a joke in the band where we're like filling out forms or whatever for our signing our who gets what split of what song thing, and Mel's just like, I'm just happy to be here.
I'm just having a nice time, guys. I don't mind.
I think that's underplaying it a wee bit. So you guys recorded all of it except for Moonsoake, if I'm right, in Portugal, and then mixed it and that kind of stuff, back in Belfast, and then you also sent stuff off to Andy Bradfield and
Avril McIntosh.
How, like, a lot of people will think of an album as something that you do in the same place. You record it and you mix it and then send it somewhere else to mastering. How did that work, having those different, mixing processes going on?
It's always how I've done it, or how we've done it. We've always never mixed it in the same space that we recorded it. Well, unless it was our demos or first EP, but generally we'd always go away and mix it somewhere else. And I personally went into the album saying I did not want to mix it. That was the rule. It was like, that was why Bill was involved for production as well, because I felt like it's our first album. I don't want that weight on my shoulders to be producer and mixer like I was on previous Wynona Bleach and then previous to Wynona Bleach, stuff. So it came about in a cool way because our manager was working A&R at this event. I wasn't going to do it, and I was saying to you, I don't want to stay. I just want to come home.
Yeah,
and
I had to come home, and I was like, oh, I wish I could stay.
So
but I think it all worked out.
Our manager was like, one of you have to go to this award ceremony because something might come of it. And fair play to her, she smuggled me into it, and I'm dressed up like I am somebody letting on that. And there's all an unbelievable amount of heads were there. Like I met everybody from like Alan Moulder and Flood, I think, were there, but I didn't get to meet them. But I hung out with Debbie Googe from My Bloody Valentine for a while, and I met Daughter. I never thought I'd ever meet Daughter, and the whole band are there, and I'm drinking their wine that they smuggled in and all. We were friends. Like, it was great, but I didn't expect. What had happened was I went into the pre-drinks thing, and I'm standing there, and it's getting a bit busy. It's really packed out, but she smuggled me in, but I don't have a dinner ticket or a seat at the dinner. Is like a proper dinner happens. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm standing there in this room, and I don't know how to talk to anybody. I'm freaked out, and I try to talk to a few people who feel like they're my age, and they're all dead on, and then they get bored and they move on and whatever, and they're trying to work the room. I don't know how to do it. So I'm standing there, and it gets so busy that I can't see my manager anymore, who's sort of working the door, and I try to work my way through the room, and I'm like working my way across, snaking through, and this woman comes through the crowd and goes in her Inverness or whatever northern Scottish accent. She goes, I wouldn't go through there if I were you. It's a bit mad. Avril ends up basically talking to me for like, I don't know, feels like forever. We just end up talking and talking. She has worked with, she's kind of one of the main pop vocal producers that exist in London. She's done everything from like all of these sort of, like, I mean, you think of X Factor, finalists and all, she's the producer for a lot of them. And she goes, "Oh, why are you here?" And I was like, "Well, my manager smuggled me in, trying to find somebody to mix the album." And then she goes, I work with a mixer, and he's brilliant, Andy, and you should send him your stuff. So the next day I wake up hanging, completely hungover, and she's already tried to phone me because she's listened to the things I've sent her, and both of them end up talking to me on speakerphone, loving it, and they end up being the fabulous pairing that ended up working on the album with us. And it made it so much easier for me as a person who was involved with it, because I loved that offloading. I was like, yes, please. So they did 4 tracks, and those 4 tracks to me are the standout. They're just the best ones.
Was it the objective of going in there to get Avril and Andy, or was it?
Wasn't necessarily then. No, it was any.
No,
it wasn't.
Didn't, like,
no,
there was no plan. It was like going in, never know what could happen, and there was this sort of, because I was like, you were like, oh, I'm just going to come home, and I was like, no, just do it. Like, I know if I had a stage, it would have been different, because I don't like things like that, and I wouldn't have wanted to go, and I might have been a downer on you, and you might have been like, oh, let's just go back then, and none of that would have happened the way it was meant to happen. So there was absolutely no end plan.
No, I had thought that maybe if we went, maybe we'd meet somebody who might mix the album. I did think that, but I didn't know that I would meet 2 incredible new friends, because what's ended up occurring is they mean so much to me now. They are really close part of our team now, or part of not even the team, they're part of my life personally, because they are 2 lovely people that I think really, really love what they do. They just love their business, and they're great at it, both of them. That's why they're both both of them have this incredible credits list. I mean, I was last night talking to my brother about, like, songs that Andy had mixed that we both grew up thinking were the best things we'd ever heard. Like, it's certainly the Spice Girls hit that he mixed was like my favorite Spice Girls hit, but then he'd done he had mixed like a lot of Bjork, and he worked with Queen, but he's not like some sort of stuffy mix engineer who hovels himself up in a room and doesn't talk to anybody. They're both really good, lovely people. Yeah, I'm very proud to have had them part of our lives and still have them part of our lives, and they're definitely doing album 2, which is brilliant. So
I was going to say the whole band only really got to meet Avril and Andy at the last gig there.
Yeah, because the lockdowns.
Like I've sort of talked to them both on the phone separately, and I don't know, it's just they've been part of my life, but I've never met them, so I was sort of like nervous about it, and then it all just we all just got on so well.
Came to see us.
Normal.
I guess it was like our first show back because it was in London. It was in Dalston.
Yeah.
And we all hit it off. It was great. They're lovely people.
Not bad having those two showing up at your London gig to get a bit of a buzz around it. So you got to the stage of, everything's done and ready. And then we're all hearing about like the vinyl shortage and the delays in production and things like that. Had you hoped to get the album out maybe last year, or was it always the plan to wait until things looked like they were opening up a little bit and then hit go?
It was so hard to like be able to commit to anything.
We just couldn't commit.
We went from wanting it out as soon as possible to being like, actually, we should shop this around a wee bit more and try and get somebody on board that's cool. Because if it's just another self-release, what's going to happen with it?
We didn't have we definitely had a let's get this out as soon as possible mindset, but we didn't have we couldn't have predicted lockdowns for start or COVID, but there was a point where I remember in Portugal, we were talking to the guy who owned the land, they owned the warehouse, and we were having dinner or something one night, and we were finishing the sessions or finishing up, and I had said to him, he said, when will I hear the album? And I went, maybe like March, April next year. And that was like September, October. I was like, yeah, next year I'll send you mixes. And actually, because of the way that the uncertainty occurred, we decided at the start of 2020 that we wanted to shop it around to labels and try to get a record deal, because we just thought we couldn't release it ourselves. We just thought it would just be a drop in the ocean. And then I did that thing and blah, blah, blah. We did some gigs, and then COVID hit. And then we were like, what the fuck? So in tandem with Andy and Avril mixing their songs, I was mixing the other ones with John Muirhead in Belfast. And I remember cycling through the city centre in peak lockdown, because we had him and I had this, he lives on his own. I live here. We were like, okay, we'll isolate for 2 weeks. You don't have it. I don't have it. After 2 weeks, we don't see anybody else. We'll work together. So I cycled across town every day. I remember getting up, having breakfast, going to mix the album. And it was every single day all the way through that summer. And I thought, the end of this summer, all this will be gone. We'll release it in winter. And then that winter comes and goes. And we got wind that Fierce Panda really quite liked it. And a couple of other labels, actually, we had some other, not concrete offers, but we had some other labels like quite interested in it, and it was a bit of a shop around thing, but we ended up going with Fierce Panda more so because of their excitement around it. Like, they were really into it. They seemed like they were the right option because we were this indie band and we didn't want to get lost in some kind of big major label machine thing. So I feel like it was the right option, and they actually sort of they give a fuck more than anybody else.
Yeah, because sometimes you can tell when somebody actually is genuine.
Yeah.
I do think that Simon
is. Simon is very super genuine. Like, we go and hang out at any event now in London and he's just like a pal. It's not like I'm having to impress a label boss. He's just a real music head, and we talk about music and we talk about everything. And then
it just seems like he's on the same wavelength as us as well.
It seems like finding that kind of good fit with an indie label or something is a huge part of it. But I'm hearing, like, it seems like there are a lot more deals like this where a band goes off and records an album and then license it to a label or shops it round, which seems opposite to what maybe people think of as what happens, which is a label finds a band and then fronts the recording. Is that the way to go for an indie band? Should indie bands be thinking, let's get an album done and then shop it round?
Yeah. Well, maybe not necessarily an album, but certainly releases. Like I think that licensing it is always sort of better. Even in the old days when advances existed, it was better to license it, and people shopped and tried to get a licensing deal if they had already made the record. We have the technology now where you can make a record in this bedroom, and it could be great if you're creative enough. So if you have the creativity to make a record first and then be able to shop it around, if you're in that position, you should do it. Certainly, it still occurs that labels will find bands that have never released anything, but that's sort of rarer. But I, in my opinion, I've been around enough people who have been in that boat that I think it's quite often pretty bad for the artist in that respect, because a lot of the time you're immediately choked, or you're immediately sort of forced to do a certain thing that they thought you were going to be, and you don't have the creativity to be able, or you don't have the ability to be creative with it. So with a licensing deal like we have, it's great because the label will support us retrospective of, or at least after we've already created the content. So I hate using the word content. It's not the right word for music.
Get that out of your mouth.
I know, but you know what I'm saying. It's like you've created this work, and then the label sort of support you post
on that.
creating it. However, now that we have what we have with them, we have that relationship. It's sort of like now when we do the second album, they're going to help us make that second album. So it's a good position to be in. Like, and I think it took a wee while for us to get to that point.
Yeah.
I would certainly recommend it if it's an option. But it depends on the label. You could get a licensing deal that fucks you. It definitely happens too. I think I personally feel lucky because I've got like really experienced mentors around me. So these people are help advise me. But I still think that, it's the way to go. If you can license your thing that you've already made, if you can find the money to do your own release, EP, single, album, doesn't matter. I think an album is such a big deal that you shouldn't do that straight away, but certainly EPs and things. And if a label if they give a fuck and they're willing to put it out, if they're the right people, it's a good thing to do, because it just takes a lot of stress off you. It still doesn't take stress off me, because I still email the fucking label manager going, and who's pitching the Spotify thing? Are we going? I'm still freaked out. But they reply with a very nice, polite, "We've got this" email. So
not quite cease and desist, but stand down.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Well, Mel, you kind of talked about like the performance side of it. Obviously, that's been shelved for the last wee while, and you had a gig, was it just before Christmas there, and then there's a gig coming up in March in Belfast. Does it feel like, are you looking forward to kind of getting back out and doing your bit of the band? That's what you're there for, the performance and the kind of connection.
Yeah, definitely. I sort of feel like, we still have been practicing as often as possible, and like twice a week is our usual, if not more. But I don't know, like the actual performance part is just, there's no like feeling to describe it. Obviously I missed it, but I feel like I've come back to it now a bit, like, I don't know, because it's easy to get in your own head about things. And I just feel like the pandemic or all the lockdowns and all sort of made me forget a lot of the things that I got caught up with in my own head. So it's easier to come back to it now and be like more relaxed and be like, I don't care.
I get to do this.
I get to do this cool thing now. I'm not like stressed about it or anything.
And what's planned for the kind of the Belfast gig?
24th of March.
It was moved, was it?
It was. Well, it was sort of planned to be a little earlier than that, but 24th of March is where we're doing it. And we have Naked Lungs from Dublin. It'll be a much more guitar-y night than we usually have, because often we'd have somebody like open the night that isn't as intense, but the whole we have Reezy Ayaro opening, who are just lovely dudes who come to every gig, and they were really like, they asked us, could we please support, and I'd sort of not promised, but I'd said I will do what I can, and I'm really glad they're getting to open, because they're a really excitable young band. So the whole night's going to be pretty guitar-y and intense, actually, more than normal. So I'm excited about that, and it's in the Ulster Sports Club, which we've never played before.
Never played. Been to gigs there and always enjoyed it. So
nice room, and we're hoping that plenty of people go. So
we'll wrap up on this, because you mentioned the aesthetic, and you mentioned was it Audrey taking photos? Like the vinyl package it's class. Like you guys sent me an advanced kind of copy to listen to, and the photos and captures everything that went on in Portugal. And then the purple, is it like aubergine purple? Is that what that is?
Yeah. It's actually a film.
Yeah, so it's like we had talked to Audrey about doing some photos for us and coming to Portugal with us. And there's this film that we really liked for 35mm film. It's called Lomochrome Purple, and it's by Lomography, and they're like a sort of small-ish lo-fi plastic camera making company. And yeah, so we got some of that, and it turns anything that's green into a lovely shade of purple. So I had quite a few people being like, "Oh my God, you've dyed your hair purple. I can't believe it." And I was like, "Look at the trees in the background. They're also purple." Yeah. It's not. Yeah. So that was a fun experiment.
It was good.
I really liked just the vibe and the colours and all. And it was just very turquoise and pinky purple heavy, and it just became the kind of colours of the...
I had aspirations of what I wanted the album cover to be, and lockdowns also caused it to not happen. So we weren't able to do the shoot that I'd always wanted. And so album 2, I'm hoping, is my original album 1 album cover idea. So Moonsoake's cover is actually just one of Audrey's photographs when you zoom in loads into the corner of one of her photographs, and then the power cable going through the middle. If you flip it over, it continues on the other side, that kind of thing. So it was a bit of in this very room messing about with the beautiful photos that Audrey had taken. She was there for the same amount of time that Bill was there, and snapped like a couple of rolls of film worth of like good moments, you know. And then of course I'm very proud of the insert, which has all those photos that aren't all
and
funny colors.
Some crappy ones from
our phone photos, But yeah, so I'm very proud of the packaging of it, considering what had been the limitations of doing it, you know. And we were always going to do a vinyl, so we put a pre-order out, and then we essentially sold out of. Well, I think we broke even within like a few months or a month or something. Within a month, I think we had made half of the sales of the record, so it paid for itself, you know. Now, 2 years later, we have to pay to post it all, and we've spent half of it, so we're like, fuck. So
if you live nearby, you're getting it hand delivered.
Yeah, it's definitely happening. Yeah. So
the personal touch. Well, look, I'll not take up any more of your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, man. It's been great.